It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of April 19th, 1996. 6 movies to look at, let's get right to it, and we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, big in quotation marks, because none of the movies that came out this weekend were big hits, especially this first movie, The Substitute, and take a wild guess and you can see what type of a movie this actually is. Somebody just saw Dangerous Minds, didn't they, and wanted to cash in. I mean, this isn't even trying to hide itself from the fact that it's a ripoff of Dangerous Minds, which had just come out almost a year prior to this. And, like, really? You're going to do it this way with Tom Berenger as the leading star in it? I mean, Tom Berenger's a good actor and all, but he was not a leading man in 1996, nor was anybody in this particular cast. And really, this movie it's just Dangerous Minds all over again, except with this time, instead of Michelle Pfeiffer in the leading role, it's Tom Berenger, and he's a mercenary and a former Vietnam veteran, so I don't know what they were thinking with this movie, and really, it's about as cheesy and as corny as you could probably get from it. I mean, it's not that interesting whatsoever. These characters are not interesting whatsoever. And yet this movie was a surprise hit and actually spawned several sequels after this. Most of them went direct to video and starred Treat Williams instead of Tom Berenger, but apparently there's somebody out there who wanted to see more of these movies, and so they made more of them. And I mean, really, what more do you need to see from this that you haven't already seen in other much better movies? I mean, Dangerous Minds wasn't even that great of a movie, but it was such a big hit because of that song. The song you all know, Gangster's Paradise, that it became a big hit. But really, does this look any different from what you usually see from these type of movies? And this one's not even that great of a film to begin with. I mean, it just wasn't for me, and I think it wasn't for a lot of people. But turns out people liked it enough to make more movies out of it. But that's just my personal opinion on it. But yeah, so that's The Substitute. Let's move on. Let's go to the next movie, and that is Mrs. Winterbourne. The kind of a been there, done that type of movie, and kind of in the middle of Richard Benjamin's downward spiral as a filmmaker, and this certainly didn't help his favors. I mean, this movie, despite a pretty good cast that it has involved here, Shirley MacLaine, Ricky Lake, Brendan Fraser, it's got some talented names aboard on it, but just the concept and the story, there's nothing really about it that makes it stand out on its own. It's like it wants to be kind of a modern period piece type of film with some of the ways they shoot these scenes and how some of the sets look, but there's nothing really about it that makes it stand out on its own. There's nothing really all that interesting about it, and everybody here is trying their best in terms of the cast, but they just don't have a really good script to work off of. It's a mostly forgettable film that really deserves more talent than more from the talent that they have on board here. But yeah, I really got nothing else for you. This is kind of a lazy, dull movie, and really, like I said, it was during a low point for Richard Benjamin's career. Like, he was kind of in a downward spiral after '93 I think his last movie that he made was actually tolerable, was Mermaids, but even they said maybe even Made in America, but after that it was Milk Money, this movie. He didn't make a really substantial movie for the rest of his career, honestly, as far as I can tell. But again, that's just my personal opinion on it. So another quick one there, that is Mrs. Winterbourne. So let's see if we can turn this tide around. Let's take a look at the next movie that we have, and that is the comedy Celtic Pride with Daniel Stern, Dan Aykroyd, and Damon Wayans. The most interesting thing about this movie is that this is a comedy centered around Boston Celtics basketball, and yet it's written by two guys from Brooklyn and Queens, New York. Two notable guys from Brooklyn and Queens, New York, and that is Colin Quinn and Judd Apatow, both of them when they worked on Saturday Night Live together. It was one of their early movies. As far as the movie itself goes, it's pretty average. I mean, Daniel Stern and Dan Aykroyd do try their best to make some of the material work, and their comic chemistry is pretty decent. At least for Dan Aykroyd, it's a lot better than the last movie we looked at with him and Ed, Getting Away with Murder. Damon Wayans surprisingly isn't really given a whole lot to do here to branch out his usual comedy style. He's not really doing a whole lot here. He's just being that guy that we saw in The Last Boy Scout, except in a more comedic fashion. Sometimes the jokes can usually get a pretty decent laugh here, but there are more misfires here and there. I mean, the movie itself isn't all that bad. It's a decent comedy. It's not an all-around winner, but it does have those little bits and pieces that kind of make it worth watching. Overall, I didn't hate it, but I didn't really love it either. It's not one you should rush out to see, but if you're looking for one of those lesser late 90s comedies that's actually kind of worth a watch, this is probably one of them. Maybe for a one-time watch, but other than that, though, nothing too crazy about that one. So that is Celtic Pride. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. So this is another one that's kind of like the last movie we looked at last week, which was Kids in the Hall Brain Candy, which kind of, some might say, kind of falls in that same category, but in this case, I think this movie works a lot better, but it definitely has flaws that are very notable. Like, for example, this movie in particular is only 74 minutes long, and not only is it shorter than the actual This Island Earth, but it's also shorter than any Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode that has ever been made, at least up until this point. But so technically, it's not even really a movie. Honestly, it's not even really an expansion of the TV show, because the TV show is at least longer than this movie is. But then again, there are some things to note about this. There are a lot of deleted scenes that eventually got cut from the movie, and Universal didn't really do a good job of selling this movie. I mean, the trailer basically says the stuff that says in there that this is the stuff that you don't have to worry about censors in here. This is the stuff that we can't show on TV, when it's still got a PG-13 rating, and there's not really anything too dark or too edgy in this movie to make it something that needs to be seen on a big screen. I mean, like I said, but I'm saying all this, but I'm saying that the movie is just as entertaining, as hilarious as the show is. I think the comedy overall is very good. The spirit of the series is throughout the film. The movie does look good. It has this bigger budget for it, and the set does look a lot better than it does on the show. So the money is definitely in there. It's just way too short. You could have added another 20 minutes to this to at least get it to an hour and a half runtime, but it doesn't really overdo this. It wouldn't really overdo the time if you had those extra minutes in there. Other than that, though, I think it's a very entertaining movie. It's a good film overall. It just really needed to be a lot longer to really be a Mystery Science Theater 3000 movie. A Mystery Science Theater 3000 is still really hilarious, and a lot of the elements that make the show so special are in this movie. But yeah, like I said, I would have liked it to have been a whole lot longer, like maybe another 20 minutes added on to the film. But like I said, there was a lot of... This is clearly made by a studio that really didn't get why Mystery Science Theater 3000 was so special. But like I said, the movie isn't terrible. It's actually pretty decent. But again, I would have liked a lot more than what the movie actually gave us. But that's just my personal opinion on it. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Anthony Hopkins making his directorial debut with August. Yet another adaptation of Uncle Vanya. I think we've looked at this is the third one to take a story inspired by the Anton Chekhov story, and it's not going to be the last one either. One of the most recent ones was Drive My Car, but this is the sixth and last one that has taken inspiration from this particular list that I have here. And as far as an Anthony Hopkins directorial effort goes, it doesn't look too bad. I say that because I've never really heard about this movie until I saw this trailer for it. It just looks very generic, honestly. It's a film about it's basically, like I said, it's an adaptation of Uncle Vanya with the character of Ian Davies taking over the title role. Davies played by Anthony Hopkins, and it'd actually be the first of only two directorial efforts that Hopkins would do, and the other one would be Slipstream. But yeah, other than that, though, I really don't have anything more on this because I haven't seen it, so I can't really say if it's good or not. But that's August. So let's go ahead and move on to the last movie, and that is Russell Crowe in For the Moment. So this is actually a film that was filmed in 1993. I think it was a film made specifically for Canada, but it didn't even hit the U.S. until 1996, in April of 1996, and even then, it was a direct-to-video release with some of the screenings, with some of the movie going to some of the theaters across the country actually showing it. That's why it showed up on the Box Office Mojo page. But you see Russell Crowe in there in one of his early film roles, which I guess because they did this, because of his rising star power, they put him in there. And the main focus of the story is the wartime romance between Crowe's character and a local girl. And it's based upon the stories of the writer and director of this, and the father of the writer and director of this, who was an instructor and bomber pilot in the war, and his mother's experience as a young woman on the home front. It takes place during World War II. And again, that's really everything I know about this one. I haven't seen it, so I can't really say too much about it. But judging by the fact that it was sitting on a shelf for 3 years until it finally came out, one would probably tell you that this probably isn't all that memorable. But I don't know. Maybe it is something that is an underrated gem. But I don't know for sure at the very moment. So that's for the moment. And so on that note, we wrap up this edition of Time About the Movies. We'll wrap up April in the next episode with 5 movies, including Jean-Claude Van Damme in The Quest, Janine Garofalo and Uma Thurman in The Truth About Cats and Dogs, Sunset Park, Mulholland Falls, and Cemetery Man. So we'll look at those 5 movies next time. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.